Welcome to Talking Jazz. My guest today is bassist, educator, composer, John Goldsby. We will talk about his new release coming out very soon. And the cool thing about our conversation today is that I'm connecting with Germany because that's where John Goldsby lives since years and years and plays with the WDR Big Band. We talked before, I talked with Randy Brecker, I talked with Dave Stryker about their work with the WDR Big Band. We talked a little bit about what an interesting situation it is to have that opportunity of radio big bands, full-time musicians. We'll get the inside day from the perspective of one of the musicians in the orchestra. Before we dive into the insides of the WDR Big Band, give us just a quick synopsis of your path from here to there before we dive into your first tune.
Well, to me, it all seemed very natural, but when I think back upon it, it's a little crazy because I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. One of the first jazz concerts I heard was Jamie Aebersold, who brought a group to my high school, I think when I was probably 13 or 14 years old, and he was playing bass. And at that point, I was already playing in rock bands, and I hadn't really heard jazz, but that was the first time I really was exposed to jazz and thought, oh, sounds kind of weird, but it's interesting. I can tell they're improvising. It's like rock music, but somehow maybe it's even hipper. So that took me down the path, becoming a jazz musician. Developmental years in Louisville until I was 21. I took up the double bass at about age 18. Then I moved to New York from Louisville. I moved in with a couple of friends from Louisville who had moved to New York. Jam session and hanging out at clubs that everybody took. There weren't many college programs. Enroll in a college and study jazz and have mentors and learn how to play at a school. So yeah, I moved to New York in 1980. Worked in New York quite a while till 1994 when I took the job in Cologne, Germany with the WDR Big Band. Been here now 26 years.
So we kind of exchanged, I got here in 88. So we took one US person over to Germany and one German person here. That worked.
I love both places. I love going back to the Midwest and visiting Louisville. I love being in New York, grown accustomed to living in Germany, and I like the vibe here. And
absolutely. Yeah. And fun thing is that actually Indianapolis and Cologne are sister cities.
You did at the Altus Fondhaus in Cologne, the Indianapolis-Cologne Connection concert. It's wonderful that two medium-sized cities like that can share cultural exchange.
Let's talk about Cologne then a little bit more. Let's listen to Sergio first. So this is from a recording that in the release state right now. Official date, I think I saw is February 16, but you're very clever in knowing the current music industry and having EPs out before everything these days gets released in stages and segments. So this first one features the WDR Big Band rhythm section, which Billy Test on the piano and Hans Decker on drums, and of course you on bass. Anything we should listen for in Sergio that you want to direct our attention to?
It depends on your level of listening. It's a happy tune. It's a danceable tune. I wrote the tune after I visited Brazil, sort of based on a bossa rhythm, but it's in 3/2 style of bossa. So that feels a little different than the normal bossa nova groove, is that we're playing in 3.
Right. And the half note beat usually is more the samba rhythm, so it crosses into it a little bit with the upbeat tempo too.
Yeah, so it's like a 3/2 samba, I would say. Yeah. Other than that, yeah, enjoy the music. Let's listen.
Let's have it. Okay, here's Sergio from the upcoming release. John Goldsby, my guest today, featuring Billy Test on the piano and Hans Decker on the drums, and the album is called Segment. Here we go. That was Sergio, a track by my guest today, John Goldsby, bassist, educator, bassist of the WDR Big Band in Cologne. Featured also Billy Testa on piano and Hans Decker on drums, which is the rhythm section of the Cologne Big Band. All of the songs we'll do today will be from this recording because it's timely and it's coming up, and there's some interesting back history too. Diving into the next one, we'll have to make a little fun of bass players first. Meaning, it's often a running joke that, once the bass solo starts, everybody starts talking because it's low, it's on the bottom, and it's a different type of sound. So the role of the bassist, usually in a group, backing everybody up, the bass of everything, pulling it all together, keeping the beat. And so where these jokes come from is just that people are maybe not necessarily used to hearing the bass as a solo instrument. The tune that we're going to listen to, you play the whole melody on. Talk a little bit about the bass as a melodic instrument and more about a well-rounded instrument than everybody perceives it usually.
This tune, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, written by one of the greatest bass players of all time, Charles Mingus, student of jazz history and bass history. I have so many heroes who came before me on the bass scene. For me, Charles Mingus was not only a great bass player, he was also known as a great band leader. What I think his greatest contribution were some of these fantastic compositions that he wrote. Goodbye Pork Pie Hat was one of his most, so when you listen to the melody, you think, oh, this is just a simple blues melody, but then he puts emotional harmonies underneath these changes. To me, that's one of the things I always hear in his compositions. He always refers back to the blues folkloric element, but his harmonic sense advanced and impressionistic. And that's something I really love about the music of Charles Mingus. A lot of people have recorded Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. Yeah, I'll make my statement on it. I can't sound like Charles Mingus. And just a note for the musicians, I play the tune, usually it's in E flat minor on the bass. Just to make it more bass friendly, I play it in E minor, the solo bass part. And then when the piano comes in, we shift down a half step to E flat minor to make it a little darker and take it out with mysterious E flat minor sound.
That's interesting though, noting that for those who don't know, the lowest note on the bass is E. So if you would stay in E flat, you would have to shift up to a higher register, so that gives it a more. So yeah, let's listen to it because it starts out with a gorgeous playing the melody, which is rarely heard. If you're in the car, turn up the volume so you hear that gorgeous bass melody. So here's Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, a Charles Mingus composition from the album segment, upcoming album by John Goldsby, featuring Billy Testa on piano and Hans Decker on drums, and my guest John Goldsby on bass. Enjoy. That was Goodbye Pork Pie Head, a Charles Mingus composition performed by my guest today, bassist John Goldsby, with his trio from the upcoming album Segment. We're going to go to a segment in a little bit, which is actually a Charlie Parker composition that is also featured on the album. But I mentioned earlier that you're the bassist for the WDR Big Band.
Hamburg and in Frankfurt and in Cologne. Yep.
So we have 3 now full-time big bands. But what that means is that actually the musicians are employed full-time to perform, rehearse every day and produce music that gets played for those radio stations. Give us a glimpse in your typical work day.
Well, at the moment with this pandemic, nothing is really typical, but the WDR has done a great job of keeping the music going. We've been doing a lot of live streams. Usually we would play 40 or 50 concerts per year. The rest of the time we would be either rehearsing or recording or producing music. When we subtract double shift days or travel days, then we're probably working about 180 or 200 days a year. And our main mission is to serve the people of North Rhine-Westphalia, so this region of Germany that includes Dusseldorf, Bonn, Aachen, Cologne, Essen. The radio and TV station is funded. They don't call it a tax, but it's a fee that every household pays to support an independent media. And they have these in the different regions of Germany. So every region has their own media group, and some of them have orchestras. Usually we play straight ahead jazz big band music, or I'd say we play 4 different types of projects. Straight ahead, or we play modern cutting edge music, the WDR Jazz Prize for contemporary pushing the envelope type writing, or we have a thing called Composer's Corner where young composers come in and play their music with them. That kind of balances out the straight ahead music. And then we play a lot of fusion and world music, Latin music projects. Projects are for students or children. Last week we did a live stream with one of our Sesame Street characters, the Dachshund, so the dachshund dog talking, and we played jazz tunes. So that's a great opportunity for young kids to hear classic jazz in a context that they might find happy or funny or interesting. That's the great thing about the band, and we're constantly moving from one project to the next project to the next project, new music. So it's not a typical big band where we have 50 charts in our book and we play those charts all the time. It's every project we get new music. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and I'm happy that we have some young players starting to think about auditioning second tenor players, because that chair is opening up. It's a great situation. It's hard to say in this day and age with everything being political and the economy.
I think you're pretty safe. One thing that Germans don't give up that easily is their culture. The thing to realize is how versatile you all have to be as musicians to fit into all these situations. My guess is when you have an opening coming up like that, it's very competitive to land that spot. How many do you think you anticipate will be flying for that second tenor?
No idea, but it will be hundreds or a couple of hundred. I don't know, but there's so many wonderful musicians in the world, and there's only one chair opening up. So in a way, it's frustrating. 2 years ago, we went through a search for a new piano player. Our original piano player when I joined the band was Frank Chastanier, and he decided to leave the band to do small group projects. And so then we did a long search, and I'm not sure how many piano players we invited, 40 or so, who came and did projects with the band. There are just a lot of factors. It's hard to say what the deciding factor is, but it has to be somebody who loves big band music and is very versatile, as you say, has their own inner voice, but is also a team player.
You'll be working with that person every day and for years and years.
So I'm really happy Billy Testa's in the band now on piano, and we really share a lot of our jazz history, what we know and what we like to refer to in our playing. Hans Decker, the drummer, I've played with probably 20 years now, so it's like my second marriage.
A cool thing to listen for, especially in this one, that you have a unit that works together on a daily basis. Being able to work together that closely, provides a different relationship than just getting together for recording and every so often. And I think that can be heard in that recording very much so, how this is a unit, their second and a third marriage. And this is actually a Charlie Parker tune. And, the way usually repertoire is constructed for a recording, you give a nod to some that went in before, some of the heroes, and then of course bring your own voice in. My guess is that part of what you pulled together for this repertoire, right?
Tune segment, the Charlie Parker tune, when first lockdown happened, the first thing we did when we were able to go back into the radio in small groups and trios, we can make some videos in our big hall so everybody's distanced. I went in with Billy and Hans, and it was one of those, what do you want to play? I don't know, what do you want to play? And Billy said, well, I've been playing Segment, that's a fun tune. And so we recorded that on video, and then a couple of months later we decided, that worked pretty well, let's put that on the record or the album. So yeah, Segment's a fun, typical bebop tune, but it's one of the only minor tunes that Charlie Parker wrote. So that's kind of an interesting part of his discography, that's this minor bebop tune that he came up with. The tune Segment is featured on the record. And then also I thought, well, the trio is a segment of the big band, and then I'm going to release the album in segments of EPs. Everything's a segment of something.
Let's listen to Segment, Charlie Parker tune, and a great interpretation by this trio. So another one from the album Segment, featuring Billy Test on piano, my guest John Goldsby on bass, and Hans Decker on drums. Here we go. That was segment Charlie Parker composition performed by my guest today, John Goldsby on bass with his trio. Features Billy Testa on piano and Hans Decker on the drums. And it's from the upcoming album segment. We'll keep going. We have a few more from that really cool upcoming album that I'm sure can be found on any streaming services and anywhere you want to. Official release date is February 16. Highly recommended. We're going to go to a tune that's called Things That Go Bump in the Night. You mentioned in the liner notes that you had a cancer diagnosis and that you had to go through. I can sympathize with that because I just finished that too. Something that's interesting, and I mentioned that on my last album too. When I went through it, I wasn't very open about it. I didn't tell people. I always felt there's an association of being weak or not up to things at the moment. And I didn't want that. The worst thing that can be done to you is then put you on the back burner and not being able to do what you do. I waited till things were done and then shared more about it, although it's, often people speculate. How was your journey? I just shared a little bit of mine.
I didn't know that I had this condition until I was having back pain and I had a PET scan, MRI first, and then a PET scan. That's when the doctor said, oh, you have to go to the hospital right away. By the way, don't pick up anything heavy at all because your spine in danger of fracturing, or it was already fractured. So I ended up in the hospital for quite a few weeks. I got 16 screws in my spine. Fortunately, I had the type of cancer that reacts very well to hormone therapy. So they started on hormone therapy, and that got everything back under control. And all of that over the course of 3 months to not really know, will I ever be able to play the bass again, or will I just stop playing, or what's really going to happen? So when I finally got back and thought, okay, I think I can go back to work and play, it was really just one step at a time and taking all these things as individual problems and just working through them one day at a time. That's how I got back to playing the bass. Just also, I first started with electric bass and could play like a few notes, like 8 bars or so, and then I had to stop. This whole diagnosis happened in September 2019. By January 2020, I was back playing again. I pushed myself, but I felt like I needed to push myself in order to not be put on the back burner. Huge learning experience and a life experience just to find out what's important in life.
And you realize how many are affected. I mean, it's a sign of our times, and we're just putting things in the environment. We have different lifestyles. We have a lot of modern technology and help that can figure out how to take care of it. So that whole stigma, when we hear the word cancer, it's always like, oh, but that's not necessarily so. The Things That Go Bump in the Night, does that have anything to do with it, or it's just a fun title?
I just moved to a new apartment, as you see from the moving boxes in the back. For many, many years, we lived in a house on the edge of the woods. So in this house, there were things on the roof, or there were things. Quite often I would hear something in the middle of the night, a screech or something, and wake up and think, what was that? It's sort of in 3 sections. It's sort of the Brazilian section, then the poppy section. The third section is the one with all the hits where everything's going bump.
So yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about German life after this, but let's have a listen to this one. So this is called Things That Go Bump in the Night by John Goldsby, also playing bass with his trio, Billy Testa on piano and Hans Decker on drums from the album segment. Enjoy. That was Things That Go Bump in the Night, a John Goldsby composition, who's also my guest today, performed by his trio from the upcoming album Segment. We talked earlier about segments, meaning, in the current music industry, you put things into pieces and release it in stretches. And then you also have extra tracks that you can release, and we're going to actually listen to one of those extra tracks. I believe this is called Black Forest Blues, and it's a Hampton Hawes tune, kind of a minor blues. The Black Forest, of course, refers to the area in the southwest of Germany. I grew up like right next to it in Stuttgart, so I know, the pictures you usually see from Germany is this beautiful landscape and the castles. You've been there now 26 years, and I hear your yeah every so often. How do you feel you engaged or became part of German lifestyle, or all these things people imagine? What would you tell them?
I still feel like a foreigner in Germany, even though I can speak the language. When I do speak German, I have a thick Kentucky accent. I can't lose that. But when I go back to Kentucky, I also feel like a foreigner. And when I go to New York, well, everybody's a foreigner in New York.
Proven that once you learn a language beyond your formative years, beyond your elementary school years, it's very, very difficult to get rid of your accents. It's an interesting situation, but I think in many ways it also makes you more creative and open.
I think that's the key, is just to be open and accepting. There's always something that's a little different. You just have to observe it and accept it.
So that next one, the Black Forest Blues. So the Black Forest is that area where the Kuckucksglocks come from, that beautiful forested area. Was that the reason you chose the tune, or how did that end up on the album?
I actually first played that tune with my friend Rob Schneiderman, who's a very good piano player in New York. I always like playing blues. I think it's nice if we're doing a selection of trio music to have a blues on the record. But that particular form, it's a little bit different. As you pointed out, it's sort of a modal minor blues form. The simpleness of the melody struck me, and this open sound of the harmony, but it's still a blues. I was always curious, well, what was Hampton Hawes doing in the Black Forest? I thought, since, we recorded this in Germany, and since that's part of the hook of the whole album, I thought, okay, it would be good to have the Black Forest Blues on the album.
One thing to realize is that most American musicians, especially from the earlier generation, were very much steeped in European touring and culture. You find all kinds, Copenhagen and Stockholm. Sure, he had a wonderful time because he wrote a wonderful melody out of it. So this is the Black Forest Blues, a Hampton Hawes composition, and that's one of the bonus tracks coming from the album Segment by my guest, John Goldsby on the bass, with Billy Test on the piano and Hans Decker on the drums. Here we go. That was the Black Forest Blues, a Hampton Hawes composition performed by my guest John Goldsby on bass with his trio, Billy Test on piano and Hans Decker on the drums. This is the rhythm section of the WDR Big Band in Cologne. So we've been talking a lot about Germany today, and we just heard a tribute to the Black Forest with a gorgeous blues melody. We'll do one more, which is the closing track of the album coming out. It's called The Sequence of Things, another John Goldsby composition. You know, something that we have to do all as musicians these days is beyond just playing and performing, you also have to figure out this business part of it and how to release an album, how to get it out, how to program a sequence of tunes that it makes sense, how to put it together. I admire the way you pulled this off in these 3 EP releases. Fill us in a little bit about the reasoning why we have to do this.
There's a lot of talk about it among jazz musicians because we're so focused on the album format, because most of us grew up listening to classic albums and we have our favorite albums, and you could hold the album in your hand or you could hold the CD in your hand. What I've noticed for my kids who are both in their 20s, no young people have CD players anymore. They all listen to playlists. They rarely listen, they rarely say, oh, I found a nice album to listen to. I'm going to listen to these 10 or 12 tunes in a row. It's all a mix of different tunes that they like. So I know jazz fans are still focused on the album, but I wanted to release these short segments of music, so 4 or 5 tunes that 25, 30 minutes in length, which I think is a more reasonable, it's like one side of an LP maybe, a shorter period of time to get an overview of what the music is. And if segment volume 1, you'll probably like segment volume 2, but it's not a back-to-back listening experience. And the other thing that is great playing with Billy Test and Hans Decker is that we share a lot of the common repertoire. We know a lot of tunes. When we recorded, I think we recorded 17 or 18 tunes in 3 days. Then I listened back to everything. I got rid of a few tunes that I thought, oh, it's too long, or it didn't really take off, or didn't feel right. And then I was left with 14 tunes. And I thought, well, that's too much music actually for a CD. It wouldn't physically fit on a CD. So then I started thinking, well, I could break this up. I could pick more or less the representative tunes for a CD release. So we have 10 tunes on the CD, but then I'll put out these 14 tunes in EPs. For jazz musicians, we just have to see what works in the way we release material these days. Some people are releasing one tune now and then, and they promote it like an album. So usually if I have one tune that I find online and I like it, then I go and I search out the album and I try and buy the album. With this release, I tried to make it available in high-res audio also.
That's actually a really cool strategy, to have this extra special version that is cool to have because it sounds better. The thing to realize is, nobody has even CD players anymore because the cars are kicking them out, the computers are kicking them out, and we have a whole generation that got used to listening to bad audio.
We go way back in jazz history to 78 LPs. Those sounded great. If you listen to a 78 on a really good record player, because of the speed and the way it was recorded, it sounds very full and fat. So I think this whole way we listen to sound, it goes in cycles. So hopefully in 5 years or so, there'll be high quality sound streaming over your phone with big headphones where it always sounds like the Village Vanguard in your head.
We'll take it out. We got to talk about a lot of different things, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time today to share so many segments of your life and thinking with me. That was really cool and really fun.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Last one, The Sequence of Things, a John Goldsby composition coming from the album segment, now available in many versions on all your favorite streaming services, featuring the WDR rhythm section of the Big Band, which is Billy Test on piano, Hans Decker on the drums, and John Goldsby on bass. Thank you, and let's have a listen. Thank you for listening to Talking Jazz. My guest today was bassist, educator, composer, John Goldsby. Tune in for Talking Jazz every Thursday at 11 a.m. and every Monday at 7 p.m. right here on WETF 105.7 FM in South Bend, Indiana, or online at WETFthejazzstation.org. Also find videos of previous shows on YouTube on the Monika Herzig channel. That's MonikaHerzig. Subscribe to get the newest updates. Thank you for listening.